Hey everyone, welcome back. This is lesson 5B, and we're going to start on page 79, and we're going to review the quadratic formula. If you remember the quadratic formula, I'm going to write it down here off to the side, even though it's right there. I see it. But we're going to write down x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That all goes under a square root, right? And this entire numerator is over 2a. This is something you saw in Algebra 1. And parts of this that I want to point out as we're looking at it, it starts off with the opposite of b. All right, so in the worked example that they show you, we have a quadratic equation, and if we write down what a and b and c are, right? Okay, so a is negative 4. They wrote it down. I advise you to also write it down on the paper. B is negative 40 and C is 99, just like they wrote it out there. When you sub it in, okay, if we want the opposite of B is where we're starting. So if B is negative 40, then we're going to sub in a positive 40. So if I were writing this out, I would write it like this: positive 40 plus or minus, okay, the square root of, and it's okay if you do some of this, you work it out before you plug it in. For example, b squared would be negative 40 squared. So I just like to square that up. Negative 40 squared, you have to make sure you're doing that correctly in your calculator. A lot of students will type this in, negative 40 squared, and they get a negative number. But this doesn't make sense, right? Because a negative times a negative should be positive. And what your calculator is doing is it's using the order of operations by squaring 40 and then making it negative. Okay, this is like a negative term. We want the negative of 40 squared. But that's not what we want to do in the quadratic formula. We want to do this part right here, negative 40 squared. We want to square that whole number. So when you're using your calculator there, make sure that we are using parentheses around that negative 40, and it'll give you the correct answer. Okay, so negative 40 squared is 1600 minus, and then we have 4 times a times c. And again, in the calculator, look at that over here, 4ac, and there's a subtraction. That's 3 negatives. So my advice, just throw this all into the calculator. Minus 4, and then a, and then c, and I put it all in parentheses, and I get minus 1584. And so we are using subtraction and negatives kind of interchangeably here. Let me put that in there, minus 1584. All right, we're going to extend that out. It's all over 2 times a. A is negative 4, so 2 times a is negative 8. Okay, and we worked our way all the way down to this part that is right about here. We have 40 plus or minus the square root. This works out to 16. Okay, so we have the square root of 16 is 4. And now from here, we just do 40 plus 4, and we make sure we do that in one step, 40 plus 4, and we divide by the negative 8 that's on the bottom. Or we get 2 answers here, 40 minus 4, and that is all divided by negative 8. Make sure, again, that you're using your parentheses when you plug it in your calculator. You should get 2 answers of negative 5.5 and negative 4.5. Okay, so I reviewed the quadratic formula. The question is, why do we have to use this big ugly thing? Why can't we just factor? Well, not everything factors, right? Sometimes we get decimal answers. And so this example on page 79 is about Seaside Serpents, the baseball team, and they shoot t-shirts out to their fans, and here is an equation that models that. They want to know when it's going to hit the ground. By the way, an important part of this quadratic formula, let me back this up. It's got to be set equal to 0 when you use this formula. This formula only works if your equation is set equal to 0. That is a common theme, right, with quadratic equations. They always have to be set equal to 0. And I just thought about that. But why does it make sense to use the quadratic formula to solve this equation? They want to know, the team wants to know how long it takes for the t-shirt to land back on the ground. Well, landing on the ground means the height of the t-shirt would be 0. And so this would be set equal to 0. That's what made me think of that. So 0 is going to equal the rest of this equation. And why can't we just factor it? Well, we have decimals. Factoring is ugly with decimals. We never want to factor with decimals. It's not really factorable. So we're going to use the quadratic formula to determine how long it takes for a t-shirt to land on the ground. Now we're on page 80, right? So my first step here, we're going to write down the quadratic formula. And we'll tell you what, we'll make a deal with you. We will give you the quadratic formula on any quiz you take, any mastery check, as long as you write it down for each problem. I think that's a fair deal. And then we also want you to write down the values of A, So I'm going to write here a is negative 16. We don't include the variables. It's just the numbers. Okay, what is b equal to? So b would be equal to 91. And then c would be equal to 5.5. Okay, and I'm going to write down the equation itself. We want to know h of t. Here's our equation, equal to negative 16t squared plus 91t plus 5. We want to know when that equals 0, right? So we're setting the height equal to 0 and we're solving it. We have our a, b, and c values right here. All right, well, let's get started with it. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug in here our values of a, b, and c. I'm going to plug them in different colors. Notice I get a little fancy here with my colors. Here's our formula, so I'll make A purple and B green and C blue. And I'm just going to take these values out, A, B, and C, and plug in what they're equal to. And check out how fancy I made that. I just took out those variables and replaced it with the numbers that represent those variables. Same color. Notice how I just used parentheses. I just put parentheses around the numbers and I subbed it in. That's easy. We'll give you partial credit if you just do that, right? Just plug the number in the equation. You don't even have to do anything but plug it in. We'll give you partial credit. Now, it's time to figure out stuff. So when it's time to figure out stuff, I call up my friend Cal. You all know Cal because I see you use it all the time. Calculator. Let's bring that thing up. Boom. Here's our calculator. I'm going to do what's underneath the radical all at one time. And I'm going to type it in the calculator just like I wrote it. So I'm going to use, I know it's a little tiny here, so I'm trying to make it a little bigger. We're going to put in just what's underneath the radical. So I'm not going to write the radical either. I'll save the radical. So parentheses 91, right? And then squared, because it's b squared minus 4, and then a is negative 16. So make sure you're using the negative and you're not using the minus. That's a common mistake. Kids get all salty. They don't know why the calculator's not working. But we have b squared minus 4ac. Then we hit enter, and it just comes out, in this case, to 8633. That is ugly. And so I'm just going to replace that b squared minus 4ac under the square root with 8633. Now it's time to take that square root. So in your calculator, that's above the x squared button. How convenient. And did you know you could just scroll up and go get that number? You don't even have to retype it. We get 92.9139. Oh, that is ugly. So writing that out, we're just going to replace the square root with the decimal. And now we're going to make sure, I'm going to write it out and then we'll do it in the calculator. We want to make sure we do the whole numerator, right? So negative 91 plus, and then that 92.9139, right? That's one, that's the first, that's the top part, the adding part. We're going to divide by negative 32. By the way, where'd that negative 32 come from? It was 2 times a, right? All right, we're good. Or, that's one answer, or it's negative 91 minus that 92.9139. I think that was right, all over negative 32. So the next big mistake the students will make is, again, they don't use their parentheses. So we put a parentheses, we're going to do negative 91, and then we're going to add to it this number up here. I'm just going to scroll up and go get it. I don't have to retype it. And then I'm going to close my parentheses and divide it by negative 32, right? So I'm doing the whole numerator. A lot of students will just forget those parentheses. It will only divide the second number. That's a rookie mistake. Here's one answer. And what's great about, going up and getting the same answer, the first one we wanted to add, the second one we want to subtract. So I can just go back up here, change it to subtraction, and boom, we have our two answers right here. Let me just scroll that over. Oh, that looks good. All right, so our two answers are going to be, x is going to equal, what do we get, negative 0.0598, right? Or x is going to equal 5.747. Okay, so if the question says solve using the quadratic formula, then here's what we want you to do. We want you to write the formula. We want you to write down what the variables are, A, B, and C. Then we want you to sub it in and show some calculations on how you get each one of these and get your two answers. Easy enough, right? So now it's time for you. Oh, no, we're going to look at 80. Whew, I got excited there. I got real excited. Meredith solves the equation. X squared minus 7x minus 8 to equal 3, and her work is shown here. Identify Meredith's error. So we're going to look at it. X squared minus 7x minus 8 equals 3. What equals 3? Can't equal 3. Or it can't equal 3. You got to set it equal to 0. Set that thing equal to 0 before we use this. We don't know the values of a, b, and c unless the equation is set equal to 0. So now they want you to actually solve the equation. Why don't you pause the video and try Meredith's equation all by yourself. Ready, set, go. Pause that video. Okay, here's what I got. Check out my work. We got to move it over. It has to be set equal to 0. We have a, b, and c. Plug it all in. We get the square root of 93. So we add that to 7, subtract it from 7. We should get 8.32 and negative 1.32. Make sure you ask your teacher if you do not get those two answers. Put up a red cup and we'll come and help you. Okay. Now it's time for you to practice 2 more. So on page 80, we're doing number 4 right here. Let's we're gonna let you do these 2 by themselves. I thought I had some answers right here. I guess I don't. Let me give you the answers, but you need to work it out with the quadratic formula. And if you don't get it, again, please call for a teacher over to come and help you. Here are the 2 answers you should get for each one of those, and you need to show all the work, right? So if I turn the page and know that you just have these answers, you're not done. You ain't getting that mastery check. What? All right, to the next part, solving systems of quadratic equations. Okay, so the next part on page 81, when we're looking at these systems of quadratic equations, you guys remember what a system of equation is? It's when you have 2 equations going at the same time, and we want to find a solution to both. All right, so this first equation here, like I know that one solution is like 0, negative 5, right? I can plug a 0 in and figure out that that'll be negative 5. But that doesn't work for the second equation. So we need a set of x and y that will solve both of these equations at the same time. So the way they used to do it back in the old days, you know, back when Mr. Sullivan was born, they take one of the equations, solve it for y, and plug it into the other equation. This is called substitution. Remember that? So then we cross out that y and we put in that whole top. This is a pain in the butt because we're doing it algebraically. So you put it all in, and then what do you have to do? Move all the terms to one side, set it equal to 0 because your goal is to factor it, or maybe use the quadratic formula if you have no life. And then you go through and you find a value of x and a second value of x. But we're not done yet because you would have to find a value of y. So we go back up here, we pick one of the equations, probably the first one because it's first. Doesn't matter which equation, but then you take the x value, you plug it in, and then you get the y value. So this corresponding y value with that x value will give you the point. Drum roll, please. Negative 1/2. And then negative 6 1/4. That is one solution. That's what would solve both at the same time. And you can plug them back into those equations if you want to. I would, plug the second ones down here. What do you get? X equals 4. When x equals 4, then y equals 23. So that is the second solution. So this system of equations have 2 solutions. So, we're going to talk about, well, what is possible when you have these quadratic equations. They're going to want you to graph it, right? And so when you graph it, here's the 2 graphs. Notice that the 2 points that we solve for algebraically will be the 2 points, x and y, where they intersect and cross each other. So we're going to write that down for f. I'm sure we are because I put it somewhere. The solutions will be the same. Okay, this is the way they used to do it. Let's do 2. Let's go to page 82 and we'll do 2. Think about the graphs and the 2 quadratic equations. Describe the different ways in which the 2 graphs can intersect. So, you have 2 u's basically. How can they intersect each other? So we have a couple of different things that can go on. You can either intersect in 2 places like the example we just did, or maybe they just touch in one place, or maybe they're on top of each other and you have an infinite number of intersection points, or it's possible they don't intersect at all. So these are all the different possibilities when you graph these 2 things. So now let's back it up a little. I'm going to show you how to do this in your calculator, and I'm going to expect you to know how to do it in your calculator. That calculator is going to be really important, right? So the first thing we're going to do if we have 2 equations is we need to solve them both for y, and they've already been solved for us, so that is fun. We're done with that one. Let me make this a little bigger so you see it. How's that? Okay. So I'm going to clear out what we got. I'm going to put the first equation in y1, and if you remember how to do that, we just hit the y button. What is all this stuff? I'm going to clear my memory. Second quit. Second memory, and then 7, 1, 2. All right, now I go to y1. That is much better. So let's type in x squared, right? Plus 3x, and then minus 5. And then we type in the second equation as well. Don't forget that's a negative x squared, and then plus 10x minus 1. Okay, we have our two equations here. If you reset your calculator, then when you hit the graph button, you'll see one, you'll see the other. But this is a common thing where students are like, well, how do I fix my window, right? They actually don't say that. They say, I can't see the graph, right? So you need to fix your window. And to do that, I always recommend, well, find out where your two functions are. Like, how high up does this red thing go here? I don't know. So we go to the table. So hit second and then table. And when you do that, you can see each of the functions. We have the first equation and the second equation. And I can just kind of scroll through these numbers. I know the first equation is going up. Look, it's quadratic. I can see it's going up to about 100. The second one goes up to about 24. So when I fix my window, I need it to go up to at least where this red one is peaking, right? The vertex of the red one, second table. So I'm looking at the red. The vertex is about 24, right? So when I hit window and I reset everything, I was at 10s. So I need to take that Y max and I'm going to make it a little taller. 24? Nah, I'll make it 50. Okay, I'll just go twice as high and then I'll look at it and see what it looks like. And notice that I have two different points right here where it intersects. What I want to do now is have the calculator intersect. Next big mistake, students just start scrolling over and stuff. That's not how we do this. Okay, so if you do this on a master check, you'll be incorrect. So write down these steps. Here we go. We calculate the intersection. Calculate, second, calculate the intersect, which is 5. Now, it's going to ask you, you could have all those y1s, y2, y3, 4. You could have so many equations on here while you're working. We have 2, but the calculator is asking us, which curve do you want to include? So if you notice, I'm on the blue curve right now. So we need to tell it, hey, select the blue curve. So you're just going to hit enter. And then notice it hops down to the other curve. What's the second curve that we should be looking at? Yeah, the red one. And do you want me to take a guess at the intersection? So you hit enter again, and it tells you the solution is 423. That's one of the solutions we got over here, right? 423. Okay, so how do we find the other one? You just repeat the process. Second, calculate the intersect, which is 5. We want to know where these things intersect each other. So now I have to put the cursor closer to the other intersection. I hit enter, I hit enter again, and then take a guess. And notice negative 0.5, which is this, and then negative 6.25. All right, that was the first solution actually that we got. So it's our expectation that you know how to use the calculator and you can fix the window. I would not be that kid that just copies answers and shows up on the master check, because we're going to call you out, right? You got to actually do these practice problems to make sure you get it. But that is how you can put them into your calculator and solve the systems by graphing using technology and, of course, attending to your precision. So moving to page 83, if it says solve the systems algebraically on your homework, no, you can just use your calculator. Okay, we're just going to use our calculator for this. So we need to clear out these equations. You can hit the clear button in each one of these, or you can reset your calculator, but that's being a little extra. Go ahead and type these equations in y1 and y2. Okay, and if you remember, we had that window from the last problem that was still working. Oh, that worked pretty good, actually. Well, that was a little surprise. I didn't expect to happen. But I was going to teach you how to reset the window. So we hit zoom and then 6, and that resets the window. But then I noticed for this problem, I gotta change the Y max again, right? So zoom 6 will make your window 10 by 10 again. But that, this is my life. I'll change it to 40 this time instead of 50. I need to go higher, so that's Y max. And now I can see them. There's 2 points of intersection. So second, calculate the intersect. I put the cursor close to the first one, then I hit enter and enter and enter. All right, so it has calculated it as -1, 0. And then for the second one, again, it's second, calculate the intersect. Let's scroll over. You got to put it close to it. Right there's close. We hit enter, enter, and then enter again. 425. That is easy. That's the easy way to solve these. No need to set these equal and then do some huge factoring problem where you'll probably lose a negative and get frustrated, and then you'll hate math forever, and then you'll just have me to blame. Why don't you try this one all by yourself, okay? Try B. Which one is this? This is 3B on page 83. Try this one all by yourself. Okay, here's what I come up with. I put the two equations in. I'm going to zoom 6. I always like to zoom 6 because it gives me, a nice little window here. But look at this. I can't really tell what's going on right here. So here's a little trick. I'm going to zoom box. What? Like Mike Tyson? Zoom box right here. You choose choice 1, hit zoom, hit box. And what you can do is you scroll down to a nice little area. And we're going to zoom in here. So I'm going to put the cursor like, check this out, check it out. Nope, too far. Alright, I'm going to hit enter. And watch what happens when I go left and I go up. It's going to zoom into this part right here because I really want to look at it really well. Now pros and cons. When you zoom in, you can see it a lot better. You could actually zoom box again if you wanted to. You want to do it twice? Double zoom box. I'm going to zoom right in here. Check this out. Double zoom box. I'm going to hit enter. I go down and I draw another box. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to zoom in again. And it gets closer and closer. So I can really look at this and see, does this intersect twice or once, right? And it appears to intersect one time right there, whatever point that is. So I'm going to do second calculate the intersect. Got it. And then I'm going to hit enter, enter, enter. And then here's our intersection, and we have to understand some things about the calculator. If we're going to use the technology, we have to understand it. So the first thing we need to understand is that this number right here is scientific notation. Notice how it says e to the negative 7. So this means 2.279 times 10 to the negative 7. That really means 0.000000022. It's a really tiny number. And guess what it ends up being? It's actually 0. So there's some round off error in your calculator. We need to understand that if we use the technology. Furthermore, check out your x value. It's 1.499999. Guess what that really is? Okay, that's really 1.5, which is 3 halves. So if we were to solve it algebraically, we would get exact solutions. If we solve it with a calculator, some of these might be slightly rounded because your calculator like goes back and forth and tries to get as close as it can. Sometimes it gets right on, sometimes it gives you numbers like this. So this is a good learning point that if you use the technology, you have to understand. If they ever give you an E, then it's 0. Look, it looks like a 0. And then the other point, we might have to round a little bit. But that's how we would do it. On your homework, if they ask you to draw a picture, then we're just going to draw a quick sketch of what we see in the calculator window, and we're going to label that point. That's what I want to see right there, that point labeled. Okay, that's basically it. That's how you solve systems graphically. On your homework, you can use the calculator on every single problem. You are welcome. That's it. This is Mr. Kelly in K-Town. Remember, it's nice to be important. It's more important to be nice. Good luck on your Master Check 5B.